Robbins, and welcome to the show.
The Tommy DeVito story is fun, and it's so Jersey. But I'm just waiting for like the other shoe to drop because we've seen that happen so many times. Are you enraptured in the Tommy DeVito story?
Look, I'm enraptured by the story. I mean, really, this is sort of like the New Jersey version of Lubie, right?
Yes,
you know, the kid wasn't even like a great college quarterback, but you know, right place, right time. I mean, everything that can go wrong did go wrong for the Giants, and he's seizing the moment. And you know, the more I hear about the kid is they really liked him in that locker room. But what clinched it for me was, did you see the attire that his agent was wearing the other day?
How great was that outfit?
Yes.
Looked like he went to the Sopranos set and took something off Stevie Van Zandt, didn't it?
Yes.
Right. Now, there is no way that guy has to go through a metal detector. No way.
The time. Wake up with Defo, joined by Lubie. Welcome to the Defo Show.
Happy day.
My first question was going to be right out of the movie Papillon, where they all stuck their head out the door in the 5 seconds that they had to get something to eat. They were trying to count for everybody as Steve McQueen was in solitary confinement there. A great movie with Dustin Hoffman. Had a terrific theme to it also about the appreciation of life, which you also gain while in the hospital. And Lubie, I have to ask you, how do I look?
You look good. It's funny. That actually music fits a lot of things. It, obviously, your return, you look really good, actually. But also on the sporting front, between yesterday and today, two of my greatest evils in sports are now hanging it up, or at least from their teams. Nick Saban yesterday, and the news comes out this morning, Bill Belichick and the Patriots are parting ways. So for us South Florida fans, it's a great day.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too hard to pick up on anything today. Plus, we have the playoffs coming up, and the Miami Dolphins don't fare particularly well in the frozen tundra of Kansas City. I think Facenda's coming back from the grave to narrate the film of this ball game, as it's going to be -8 degrees in Kansas City. I was just doing a little research on the ice ball game, which I was 16 years old, huge sports fan. Of course, you didn't get that many games on TV. It wasn't like every day that you had 500 games to choose from. These brave young men are here to play a child's game. This thing's getting a little funky on me here. But anyway, and we're also happy to add in the 5 Reasons Sports Network as a daily occurrence here on the Defo Show. So Scoop Skolnick doing a fine job with the local outfit. We know that the people there clamor for information about the Miami Heat. And my theory on that, as we begin today with this new affiliation, we've been airing stuff on 5 Reasons for a while. Hey, what stuff? I haven't seen it.
Every day.
You say it's extremely Heat-centric, the 5 Reasons Sports Network, that the people are crazed not only for the Heat, but for Heat minutia. Like you have to be inside the brain of Scoop and Ira Winderman to really get what it is that drives these people and makes them passionate about the Miami Heat. But since Eric Spoelstra got all that money, man, he ain't so hot, huh? Losers at home to Utah yesterday. That was rather unfortunate, but that's a whole different thing. There's so many things happening, Lubie, as you alluded to, and you can't help but go with the headlines. I didn't even see the Belichick thing.
Yeah, that was
when did that come out? Like at 3 a.m?
6 a.m, yeah.
Wonder I missed it. I was on the toilet. These antibiotics. And later on today, I'm actually going to do our Tony Bruno radio show on the Tony Bruno Sports Network while on an IV drip.
Oh, nice. That's new.
Reminds me. Very Hank Goldberg-esque in the late days and stages of Hank's career. May he rest in peace. And I love the man, even though he was a curmudgeon. What are you talking about, you jagoff? As Manny from Miramar would call in, and Hank would just absolutely annihilate him on the air. And then he would become obsessed with that for the rest of the show. He couldn't get away from it. And that was one of my favorite things about listening to Hank Goldberg. But deep in his heart, he couldn't have been a better guy. And was a very sincere guy. Was always very nice to me from the time I came to town in 1981. Got a little jackpot. This is a rare call that you get from somebody where they say, hey, listen, if you need any money, I'm here for you. Because everybody knows that the legal system is all about just grabbing and taking as much cash out of your pocket as they possibly can. But when you got money left, okay, we're swiping that too. Just ask Joe Carroyo. Well, that's a different story. There may really be some corruption involved there, but let's get to it because we only have a little bit of time to be with you here today, and we have a lot of things to do. All right, so start at the top. Nick Saban. We know why we hate Nick Saban here in town. Do we not? I mean, look, it all happened during those 2 years he was with the Miami Dolphins, and it didn't stem from the fact that the Dolphins doctors screwed him by suggesting, this Breeze, he'll never throw another pass again. And Dante Culpepper, even though he was timed in a wheelchair at 9.6 in the 40-yard dash, they said, well, this is your guy, Nick. Imagine. I mean, Nick Saban never really had great quarterbacks at Alabama. You would have to say that he made the most out of quarterbacks that weren't necessarily suspect. But, it wasn't like he had Richard Todd there or Joe Namath. He had a bunch of guys that were okay. So that's a testament to his coaching ability, maybe his recruiting ability. Mm-hmm. As, he probably was a better recruiter than he was a coach, Nick Saban. I think he may even say that.
Yeah.
And this year, look, his team wasn't all that great. They had a little bit of a drop-off in terms of talent. They were behind Georgia in a lot of different categories, even though Georgia lost, 18 guys in the first round of the NFL from the previous year's championship team. Yeah. And somehow there was Nick. I mean, right there again, by whatever Fugazi method, the College Football Playoff Committee came to this decision. I don't want to get you started, Lubie. About the fucking of Florida State. There we go. But he was there and made a very representative showing against Michigan. Played better against Michigan than Washington did, which everybody thought the Pac-12 was so great. You were amongst those that thought the Pac-12 was vastly superior to any other conference this year. And there's Nick Saban. And he did a lot better. Acquitted himself very much better than Washington did when going against the Michigan Wolverines, as they played them tight and had a legitimate chance to win that ball game. So, greatest coach ever in college football history. Is that a fair statement?
No, yeah, by a lot. I mean,
7 national titles. Yeah, go ahead.
No, yeah. I mean, look, Bear Bryant did an era where you could lord players, and I still don't know if he was as good as Saban, let alone Saban doing it in this era. Yes, I get it. He still could control things in a way you won't go forward, but I mean, the way he won was something we had. Look, Bobby Bowden was an amazing coach. Bobby Bowden did great things. Bobby Bowden has 2 titles. Like, the guy has 7.
7 national championships, right? 2 different teams.
He has 6 at Bama, and he's only at Bama like 15 years. And he has. And
it was 17 years at Alabama. It was 17 years ago he left Miami in disgrace, saying that he was not going to become the Alabama coach. 12 conference championships, 19 bowl wins, 292 victories in 28 seasons, so averaging over 10 a season. 5 SEC Coach of the Year awards and a 15-17 record, unfortunately. This is the one blot on his record, although that's probably not bad with the material he had to work with the Miami Dolphins in his 2 seasons with the Fins. But it was his despicable behavior and the absolute damage, the carnage that he did inside the Dolphins' offices in terms of the culture of the team from an organizational standpoint. When he was firing secretaries, you had that guy O'Brien that Dave Hine was talking about on our show one day that used to just follow him around. And some woman would say, hey, coach, how are you? And he would whisper to O'Brien, make sure she's gone by the time I get out of the bathroom.
I love that wasn't like, look, people make fun of you for exaggerating this and that. I love that wasn't an exaggeration, that Dave Hyde actually said, no. Later that day, his henchman came up to the person and said, don't ever say good morning to coach again.
That was Tony Equus, the equipment manager, who had been with the team forever. I think Tony Equus might have been the love child of Don Shula.
Exactly.
And, dedicated, loyal employees. And that was true of the people inside the offices of the Miami Dolphins. And Nick Saban just, fired off on them as if he was Napoleon himself. In fact, I think they might have called him Bonaparte, and he had a little bit of a Napoleonic complex when he was here, perhaps frustrated that it wasn't going to be so easy to dominate like he did in college while he was in the National Football League. But that aside, you would have to credit him with being the greatest college football coach of all time. Never mind the Bear. Never mind any of the other fabled college football coaches. Bo Schembechler, shaking in his grave every time Nick Saban posted another victory. And the 7 national championships speaks for itself. Although he was accorded many favors in terms of being in a position to win those titles. And the SEC may not have been what it has been in the past this year. Might have been watered down just a little bit. But overall, during his 17-year tenure at Alabama, the SEC was a dominant conference. So
Yep.
to win in the fashion he did and with the frequency that he did, you would have to give him that. Belichick, where do you stand on that? I still thought that Belichick could coach. It was the old cliche that was applicable to Bill Belichick, which is, and you hear this a lot. Well, you know what? Belichick, the general manager, is really letting down Belichick, the coach.
Yes.
The problem was they were one and the same person.
Yes. Yes.
And if you're the New England Patriots and you're looking at that roster and you're saying, what is this shit? Who could work with this? I mean, is that going to be a desirable job? You would think that would be one of the premier jobs in the National Football League, head coach of the New England Patriots. And yet, what do they do at this stage? How do they?
The linebackers coach, the guy, he was a linebacker under Belichick, and he's already on the Gerard Mayo. He's the linebackers pseudo defensive coordinator, and they're talking about him taking over as head coach.
No Josh McDaniels rumors?
No.
How many jobs is that bum going to get? You want to bury a franchise, hire Mike Tannenbaum as your GM and Josh McDaniels as your head coach. Interesting. I actually thought he was going to come back and coach the team this year. But maybe when Bob Kraft told him just how much his role was going to be diminished, he said, why don't you just make me the special teams assistant coordinator while you're at it? It's kind of like, when they proposed that we work nights at 9:40 wins. You know what? We're going to move you out of that morning drive slot. The 10 to 2 spot is they're really kind of weak for us. Maybe you guys can shore that up. And while you're at it, take out the trash. And then Pete Carroll also had his number taken down. Pete Carroll by the Seattle Seahawks. I was a little surprised by that. Yeah, I think Pete Carroll is a very good pro coach. Only had the one Super Bowl. Everybody remembers the stupid play where Malcolm Butler intercepted the pass when everybody thought that he should have handed the ball off to Marshawn Lynch. It was actually an amazingly flukish play because Butler came out of nowhere as if he was dropped in from above the stadium to pick that pass off, and you would have thought the play would have worked. But why are you flirting with disaster? This is your big thing about Mike McDaniel.
Yes.
Why are you flirting with disaster when the simple thing to do would be to run the football?
Yep.
And then with McDaniel, you're asking yourself, why are you running the football now?
Yeah.
That you're behind the 8 ball. All of a sudden, you're going to run 2 dives into the line of scrimmage when you just went down 7 points against the Buffalo Bills, and you had them by the jugular.
They did.
So, very interesting stuff. Now, we have to get to the Miami Dolphins and their game against the Kansas City Chiefs because this is going to be vintage stuff. We all know the statistics. And remember that time we did I guess we've got a few cold weather sites to do Super Bowl coverage in our 14 years together.
Yeah.
The first was Dallas. It wasn't really that cold, but they couldn't even handle an ice cube on the road in Dallas.
Dallas. I forgot about Dallas.
That was a disaster. New York was probably the coldest Super Bowl that we ever attended. Great idea there by Roger Goodell to have the game in a snowstorm. When any other city in the world would have been like going to Hawaii. And I sort of lost my adaptation to being able to go into cold weather and feel comfortable. I grew up in the Northeast, went to Syracuse. You can't get a colder motherfucking place than Syracuse. Really, I mean, like 50 below was you were getting out sunscreen. And, we used to, die and crave every ray of sunshine anywhere we were at that time. We didn't know anything about skin cancer. You'd be out there with those reflectors trying to soak up the sun. Hey, look, it's 25 below here. Really nice day. You're out there in a T-shirt and shorts. But the adaptation to the cold has never been good for the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins turn into, well, what would it be? What's like a really hideous fish? Smelts? Sardines? Are you inclined to open up a can of sardines? Even the way that you have to open a can makes you know that it's going to be a little bit squirrely.
No.
Blowfish, would be the obvious one. Is that a delicacy in Japan?
Yes.
Blowfish?
Yeah.
See, I can't see myself eating a blowfish at any time. We used to catch them and use them as a softball. I know that's animal cruelty, but you'd puff them up and then go, here, get that. Some guy would have a Louisville Slugger and try and knock it right back into the pond. In temperatures below 40 degrees, the Dolphins have lost their last 10 games as a franchise. Tua Tagovailoa is 0-4 in temperatures that are 45 degrees and below. And below is the key word here. It's going to be 8 below 0.
Oh, Jesus.
Reminds you of, as we said, the Ice Bowl game. 1967, the Dallas Cowboys and the Green Bay Packers from Lambeau Field. And what I remember about that game, and I just looked up the stats, I didn't realize this guy was that statistically insignificant. My man, the giant castoff, Chuck Mersine, who had, I thought, dominated that final drive, which could have been known as the drive until Bernie Kosar came along with the Cleveland Browns. And then that was the Elway game, known as the drive, where they come back and win the ball game. But I didn't realize he had two passes that he caught. Mersine did for 22 yards, and then he had like 2 or 3 runs in the ball game for another 20 yards, and yet he was the central figure that I remember being the key. Never mind Jerry Kramer, who just got into the Hall of Fame. Never mind Bart Starr sneaking over the right side of the line as Jethro Pugh was knocked into the second row by Kramer. The one block that stamped him as a guy that had to be a certain Hall of Famer. It was Chuck Mersine who seemed to be the impetus, the catalyst behind that final drive that got the Packers the winning touchdown with 16 seconds to go in the ball game. Yeah, you know what was great about that ball game? They had the University of Wisconsin lacrosse marching band was supposed to perform there, Lubie. And before the game, it was so cold that 6 of the tuba players had to be taken to the hospital because their lips were stuck. Lips were stuck to the instrument. And they were taken, what do they call this thing that they were afflicted with? Hyperthermia. The Packer players, some of whom were late to the ball game, they couldn't start their cars. That's how bad it was. The announcers were half frozen. And it was a disaster from a weather standpoint and all the conditions. The Dolphins in those conditions are going to be, I think, really in a challenging and compromising position. And you're looking at what? The Kansas City Chiefs not being an overwhelmingly daunting opponent in this game. 4.5-point favorites now, Lubie. What do you think? You were not impressed with the Dolphins' last effort, as everybody was disappointed the way they performed in the second half against the Buffalo Bills.
Well, I mean, look, it wasn't the effort. The number of injuries that they have right now is utterly insane. I mean, the offense, at least, they should be getting Waddle back and hopefully Mostert. So the offense actually should almost be at full throttle outside of Tyreek Hill. It's definitely not himself. The problem is the defense. I mean, and the defense did a decent job. The Bills only scored 14 offensive points. And Allen, for all the stats and all the glory, wasn't good for most of that game.
He was horrible in the first half.
It's just, they just have so many injuries. They're down their top 3 edges. They literally signed 2 guys. I didn't know Bruce Irvin and Houston were still in the league. These guys are going to actually get minutes, get actual plays in this game. What are you going to do? Like, as bad as the Chiefs have been, and they have been bad, and it's not like their offense is built for the run, the snow either. They play 4 to 5 games a year in this weather for years, and they've won a lot of games in this weather. I didn't realize Tua has never won a game under 50 degrees. That's
well,
not
it's
good.
a small sample size.
But exactly, it's worse. So he's even played in these games.
Yeah.
So he's talking about, well, I'm going to throw around, and that's how I'll know how it'll be. No, Tua, that's not how you'll know. When you get hit in the face by Chris Jones, that's how you'll know.
Yeah, and Pacheco is a really solid runner.
Yes,
I don't think Kelsey has been anything close to what he's been. You can attribute that to a lot of different things. Maybe he's been in the league too long, taking those hard hits. Could it be the Taylor Swift factor? Women weaken legs. That has to be. I mean, you talk about distractions. That has to be a bit of a distracting factor. I mean, people always talk about, well, the distractions around the Super Bowl. They got to go to media day, and they got to have lunch, and they got to do this. I never buy too much into that. That I think players can handle. I guess it would be a distraction if you're talking about Tyreek Hill. You could consider it a distraction when all of a sudden you're looking at Lisa One-Eyed Lopes and your house is on fire. You're standing there in an ankle boot, a walking boot, watching your house go up in smoke and wondering what the hell happened here. And it turned out, very fortunate that nobody was hurt in this incident, as I guess it was a child was playing with a lighter in one of the bedrooms there, and it's a massive sprawling place, so there was a likelihood that nobody would discover this, and fortunately nobody was hurt, but it had to be somewhat of a distraction. And yet at the same time, Tyreek Hill uncharacteristically really what was a detrimental component. Maybe it's because his ankle has been bothering him and he's toughing his way through it. That's what Drew Rosenhaus implied. But dropping passes, you would think, I don't know, is that associated with that? I mean, he's dropping balls that are thrown right in his hands by Tua Tagovailoa. So you cannot have your best player all of a sudden go on, the fritz and not be able to perform to the level that you'd seen previously. So, in addition to Waddle being out, Mostert being out, and now you're dropping down a level with everybody that you have in the starting lineup at a couple of key skill positions. You have a guy that's in the lineup that isn't performing up to speed, and you absolutely need that guy to be stellar. So, what do you think? My grandmother's dying words, we often allude to, always take the points. You have the Kansas City Chiefs laying 4.5 at home. They are 9-8, Lubie, against the spread on the season. The Miami Dolphins, though, in the month of December, talk about the June swoon. This is the nosedive in December, and we saw it typically. And how imposing was it that they lost that game to the Tennessee Titans? That seems to be the game that has them snake bit a little bit.
Yep.
Those final 4 minutes might have defined their season and might have sabotaged it to the level where they have to face these horrendous conditions against Kansas City. The 4.5 points might be a little bit prohibitive. Where would you stand on that? I'm going to assume that the Kansas City Chiefs will be able to do enough to win this ball game. I don't know that they win it by more than a field goal because they've been playing tight ball games all year. And as we've been talking about all season long, they have lost that element of explosivity.
There you go.
What is that, Defo?
I still love that.
They're not explosive. And the Miami Dolphins may have lost a little of that too, as the edge has gone off that offense. It's not as sharp as it's been through the year, and at least from the standpoint that they haven't been able to sustain it over the course of an entire ball game. Whereas earlier in the season, you didn't want to face these guys when they were putting up 70 on the Denver Broncos. That was like a light year ago.
Yep.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens in Kansas City. Which way are you going to go on that? Point spread 4.5 points. You need to make a commitment here.
I lean to the Chiefs. It sucks to but the Dolphins, it's funny. It's not the Chiefs so much as the Dolphins' injuries just scare. To me, they're going to have to run the ball a lot, and I don't know if Mike McDaniel's going to have the patience to do that. And I don't know how you make up for losing your top 3 edge guys. I mean, the defense is so predicated on getting pressure with your front 4. Like, how? I don't know mathematically how you can do that. So I don't see how. Like, to me, it would be a massive letdown for the Chiefs if they don't win this game. Whoever wins, I think will cover 4. So I think the Chiefs will win and they'll cover. It sucks, but this Dolphins last month, the injuries where they were supposed to be going away, they got worse.
Van Ginkel out of this ball game. He was great for most of the season.
Yeah, he's like top 10 in like pass rush percentage or something. He had a fantastic year. Chubb was coming on. Phillips was playing really well.
Yeah, another one. Yeah. So, eventually that has to catch up with you.
Yeah,
I mean,
Baker's hurt now, and they were a disaster without him. He came back for one game. He's hurt. Howard, the word is he's not guaranteed to come in. So what the hell? What are you going to do? Kelsey's going to have the best game he's had all year. They don't have anyone to cover him. So it's just, I just mathematically don't see how you can overcome all of that.
Another key factor, too, is how would you rate this and how much would you put it into the equation there if you're trying to make a decision about the outcome of the game? The fat man versus the intellectual on the sidelines.
That's
Andy
big.
Reid chowing down on a big turkey leg before the ball game, smothered in barbecue sauce. And there's Mike McDaniel, and he's reading Nietzsche and War and Peace, coming up with all these philosophical gems, wearing those funny-looking pants. What are those called? Joggers?
Yeah.
That he wears. Reed looking like he just came out of a clinic after having bariatric surgery, and it hasn't kicked in yet. But in terms of experience and playoff coaching experience, you have Mike McDaniel, who has 1 game worth, and the Dolphins haven't won a playoff game in a long, long time. Now, I don't know that those teams from the past have any impact on the club that they're putting out on the field this Saturday. But nonetheless, you would have to think a huge coaching edge in terms of knowing how to handle the situation for Andy Reid over Mike McDaniel, who tends to get, and you're not wrong about this, Lubie, tends to get a little funky. I think he outfoxes himself as the game goes on, and he hasn't really shown that he's one of those coaches that when there's a problem, and he's always talking about, well, you know, you have to define yourself by how well you face adversity, and it's good once in a while. I don't know that you want this kind of adversity.
Every week.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Where you run the ball 3 times in the second half after you were dominating on the ground in the first half of a ball game, and then when you fall behind, you decide to, hey, let's go back to the running game and eat up some time.
Thank you.
So, that's going to be a lot of fun, though, over the weekend. Now, what about the other games on the playoff slate? I'm just looking at the AFC, and you have the Cleveland Browns, which I think the defining thing about the Cleveland Browns situation now, what was that game against Cincinnati? And this headline still, just jumps off the page at me. Browns to sit Flacco. And you're thinking, why don't they? I mean, unfortunately, he checked out during the last couple of weeks of the season. But, if they announced that they were going to sit Frank Ryan, would it be just as significant? Flacco was thrown out of the New York Jets offices. The Jets, who were starting Trevor Siemian.
Yep.
And I had nothing but problems at quarterback the entire season, including that whole Zach Wilson experiment where he had one good half out of 16 ball games, and they were ready to anoint him as having accomplished and fulfilled all of his potential, and they drafted him number 2 overall and gave up a lot of draft capital to put themselves in that position. But, Flacco, can he continue, or is this going to be another one of those Tommy DeVito stories where, he ends up going from the jar cover of Rayo's spaghetti sauce, and all of a sudden he's hawking ragu?
The thing to me is that game, as much as people are going to want to go, yay, CJ Stroud, it's about everything else. And the Browns defense, I think, is like top 5. Myles Garrett may win Defensive Player of the Year. They're loaded front to back, and they play really smart, and they're really playing well right now. They run the ball really well. They actually have a lot of talent on offense. So to me, the Browns actually are just the better team. And Flacco, it's funny, for as old and as bad. We watched him play the Dolphins last year and be horrendous.
Yes.
He's not doing that. He's staying out of the way. And that's all that team needs. To me, the Browns just have way more talent than
they have a great defense, the Cleveland Browns.
Have way more talent. Like, and the Houston story, it's great, D'Amico Ryan's whole thing, but I just don't. At some point, he's a rookie quarterback playing against a good defense in the playoffs against a veteran quarterback who gets it and knows to not do too much. And the CJ Stroud story has been this amazing story where he's made all these big plays.
He's been fantastic. I mean,
he's been really good.
Cut rookie of the year.
But it feeds in. You would think it would feed into him trying to do too much, and it just, to me, it just feels like the Browns will win. It just, I don't know what they're going to do going forward, but it feels like the Browns in this game, just, they have a lot more veteran leadership, and they're just more talented. They have a lot of talent, and Joe Flacco staying out of the way.
Well, we talked to our buddy Brandon Lang, one of our favorite handicappers, a few weeks back. A conversation that probably should be buried somewhere if we want to continue our careers. But it was hysterically funny, although kind of laced with not just expletives, but imaging that would be characterized as maybe not favorable for broadcast purposes. I enjoyed it immensely. I mean, we were laughing along, but after a while, we were kind of sitting there in horror. It was like an Aaron Rodgers conversation.
Yes.
Or even Pat McAfee wants to distance himself from the guy. Well, we're happy he's not on the show anymore. We were paying him $1 million a year to come on once a week, and he wouldn't talk to anybody else. We had the exclusive rights. It's the only reason anybody tuned into our show, and it was all reporters who wanted to get quotes from Aaron Rodgers. But thank God this bum is out of here.
Exactly.
That was an interesting position to take by McAfee, who's supposed. I mean, how would you feel if you were Aaron Rodgers and you saw that?
I don't know.
A guy who made this guy's show for the most part.
He did. That's the only reason anyone cared about a show.
Being condemned as being, a disease, which I love the quote here on the chat line from our good friend Blanche, who says, it's a disease, but curable. In this case, it may not be. Bills laying 10 to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Brandon Lang had given up the Steelers for dead. Yep. They somehow worked their way behind Mason Rudolph into the postseason. Had to have a series of other things happen, but they did what they had to do, as the cliche goes, and found their way into the postseason. But they have to go on the road and face the Buffalo Bills, who, even though they won 4 in a row down the stretch and beat the Miami Dolphins, were they overwhelmingly impressive to the point where you're willing to lay double digits with these guys? I guess at home, they could be a very imposing figure.
Stop playing. The only thing the Steelers had was freaking TJ Watt. And
Yeah.
I know he's not playing. Like that spread sucks. So I wouldn't touch the game officially, but I would pick the Bills just because I don't know how the Steelers do anything on either side of the ball.
If it wasn't for the bozoic plays that were made in that game by Josh Allen in the first half against the Miami Dolphins, they probably win that game by 21 points.
Well, that's the thing for people that are giving Tua crap. As bad as he was, Allen was worse. Allen gave up 12 points. Like, even if they just run it into the line and kick 4 field, remember, before the half, he threw it into he let Jerome Baker make the best play of his fucking career because he threw it into the goddamn play of field with no timeouts. If they just kick a field goal, that's 12 points. The Dolphins weren't scoring that. I mean, so that's the thing is like, no, the Bills, it's very much like the Chiefs Dolphins. It's not like I'm pro Bills. I don't know how the Steelers win. I just don't know how.
And I do believe that, not just because of the personnel changes, but overall, the Miami Dolphins are a completely different team right now. And the Steelers didn't impress me all year long. I don't know about laying 10, but I'd be inclined to... Excuse me, Lubie, I got to go back to the hospital. I'd be inclined to lay the 10 points with the Buffalo Bills. Do they still play in Orchard Park, New York? Or did they move? Yeah? Okay.
No, Rich Stadium. I mean, it's the same thing.
Oh, that's right. They never got the new stadium. They were threatening to move to Toronto. Everybody threatens to move to Toronto. You would think it was the old days with the Army and military draft. Yeah, you know what? You pick my number. I'm going to Toronto. Anyway, we have to get out of here. It's going to be a great weekend, and we'll have a lot more to talk about. Good to be back with you guys, by the way. And Lubie, thanks so much for carrying a load there while I was hospitalized. And thinking about, I don't want to admit this because my wife's upstairs asleep, I guess, the Mustang. But, you can't help but fantasize like you're on a plane. All of a sudden, you have all these wild sexual fantasies, even if the flight attendants aren't all that good looking, even if they're guys. But every time I fell asleep, I had visions of an orgy going on, and maybe thinking that some of those needles were going to be in the same vein as Kurt Cobain. You were just hoping, hey, can you put a little morphine in there instead of just drawing blood? That would certainly ease the situation. Anyway, thanks guys for tuning in, and we like this whole new thing going on with 5 Reasons Sports Network. So we'll have a lot of stuff posted on there. So look for that in the future. I think we're going to do it every day, Lubie, and try and just overload the internet with content and the streaming world. So we will see you tomorrow. We will be doing a Tony Bruno Sports Network radio show today. You can download the app, Tony Bruno Sports Network, and we'll have our no filter stuff, which seems to be really skyrocketing with all kinds of great numbers and success. So we're very happy about that. Talked to the people there yesterday, and they give us some very encouraging words. Although I was on a tilt all that time, wasn't I, Lubie?
I told you that. I just wasn't going to fight you. You were fine.
Doesn't it scare you when a guy has the tilted head? Those guys always frighten me a little bit. I don't care, a guy can have like snot coming out of his nose and be drooling, frothing at the mouth, but the guy with the tilted head is always the guy that you have to watch out for. So we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks so much. You can tune into our other stuff on nofilter.net, Caffeine TV. Just download that and or the Tony Bruno Sports Network. And for Mike Lubie Lubitz, I'm Jeff DeForest. Thanks for tuning in. And good to be with you guys both on South Florida Live and the 5 Reasons Sports Network. We'll see you tomorrow as we leave you know that.
The time.
It's 8:41.
Let's go to eat a damn snack.
Look what they done to my soul.